Eleni, you've talked about how the number of heat-related deaths are underreported, and clearly this is an area where, there's an absence of information, there's a lack of understanding. Could you explain both how deadly this threat is and what efforts governments are taking to have a more accurate assessment of how many people, whether it's in Athens or elsewhere, are dying from extreme heat?
So we know that today there is about 350 cities in the world that where people are facing temperatures that are above 35 degrees Celsius, which is temperatures that are starting to be really dangerous for the human body. And we know that in the next few decades, it's going to rise from 350 to close to 1,000 cities. And by the end of this century, we're talking about almost half the population of the planet having to face temperatures that our bodies are not made for, and our cities are not made for. What happens to our bodies is that when the temperature rises, the body starts losing its capacity to regulate its internal temperature, its internal temperature.
Yeah.
So it starts. You start having a heat stroke, and different organs start to have a hard time coping with the temperatures. And so in cities like Christina said, like in Santiago or in Athens or other cities that are people are used to being hot in the summer, they don't really realize that we're talking about a different type of heat, that we're talking about temperatures that are higher, longer, and more frequent in the summers, that our summers are becoming significantly hotter and our bodies are not used to these temperatures. And we are seeing issues that don't beyond kind of a lot of different health problems. We also see mental health problems rising as heat rises. We're seeing issues of violence in communities rising, problems with education, kids not being able to absorb information very well. We have more and more studies where we realize that we've been talking about global warming, but we really haven't studied the effects of what that means to humans and especially to urban populations. So we have data about temperatures and about climate change and the effects of climate change, and how we have data from satellites that tells us a lot about as Christina pointed to, like where are the hotspots in cities, so we know where to target our initiatives. Mm-hmm. However, we're still lacking a lot of data, for example, around, as you said, health. We don't really, it's difficult to get data around health, mortality and morbidity, especially in countries that are in parts of the global south. It's really difficult to get data that so that we know and we start figuring out what really the effects are. It's hard to get data about what the impact of heat is on our economies. We're just now starting to see reports on, for example, the global GDP and what is the expectation because of lower productivity, because with heat we can't work so well, and we have also more work-related injuries, but also just a loss of productivity. Just from that, we know that we're going to have a significant problem with people being able to
work and things like that.
To work and to survive on jobs, especially with manual jobs. People lose their daily wages because they can't work. And when they lose their daily wages, this is like this terrible, detrimental issue for families that are living day to day. And So these are issues that we have to really look at, and the data for these types of things can make politicians and can make governments take the right type of policies, but not just governments, also foundations, humanitarian aid, etc., like to learn how to target the people that are most affected by these things.